I wish I could have been a fly on the wall when you and Koppelman were going to a strip club.
Yeah. Well,
The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone marinade.
That's
The Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle.
Whoa, I'm so sick of this town. Whoa, I'm so sick of this town. Why the hell are we still hanging around? Whoa, I'm so sick of this town.
Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 114, and our guest for the second time is Michael McDermott. To paraphrase BJ Barham, Michael has come out of the darkness to be the light. His illustrious career goes back to the early 90s. For many folks, he is the best songwriter you've never heard of. For others, he is the voice of multiple generations. His most recent record, St. Paul's Boulevard, is my favorite thing he's done. McDermott builds this world and trusts himself and his collaborators to guide, but not totally lead the listener. It's an immersive experience, much like this conversation with the man himself. Everyone, for the second time, my conversation with Michael McDermott.
Another mom and pop shop closing down. Whoa, I'm so sick of this town. Each year it's more or less the same. Strip malls, bar brawls, football games. Around here we love to sit and blame. It seems such a novel shame.
I turn it up. Hello,
Yeah.
hello, hello.
No, you sound good. You sound
Okay.
good. Yeah. Hey,
Hey.
good to see you again, buddy. It's been 2 years.
Yeah. How have you been?
I've been well. Thanks. Yeah. Just really fortunate. Just
Yeah,
like,
good.
yeah. Things have been good. How about you?
Good. Same. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been I was reflecting on we recorded an episode of The Marinade right when shit was still crazy, right? We were still
Yeah.
like, not that it's not crazy now, but everybody was under quarantine. You had just released a wonderful record. And it's interesting how music always reminds me of time and place, and I think it does that for so many of us.
Right.
But it's so interesting to think about like the records I was listening to at that time, and your last record was one that I was just like wearing out. I was listening to it constantly, and it was so poignant for the moment, but also it just resonated with me. And I loved our conversation. Like I've done this, what are we on, 116 episodes? And I like, that is so that conversation is so fresh in my mind. It was like what I needed in that moment, the connection that we had in that moment. So it's been fun to kind of go into your new record and then think about where things were then and where I was then and what life was like then, because it feels so present and so immediate when I think about that time and the connection I have to that record.
Well, it's good to hear you say that things have been so good for you, because I don't think a lot of people say that.
Yeah. Well, no, I think you're right, but I've been really fortunate, but I also I think one of the things that's happened in the last couple of years is that we've all kind of been forced to, I've recently been reflecting on this. We've all been kind of forced to take stock of so many things.
Yes.
And like the last couple of months in my life have been super heavy, but I feel more equipped to handle them.
Yes.
Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I think I think there was a palpable shift in priorities for people. I mean, I think everybody kind of got their shit together. I hope some didn't. I joked about that if some people are on their deathbed and they go to meet the creator and they say, can I just get a little more time? And the creator would say, more time? I gave you 2 years. All you did was binge watch on Netflix. What did you do at that time? I gave you that pause button and time to get your shit together. And some of us did, I think. I mean, but it's like you said, it was a good thing. I mean, I needed it,
Yeah, no, that pause button is exactly it. Like it, yeah, exactly. And I look at where I am now, and it's interesting also though, and I'm interested in hearing your perspective on this and what's been happening with you. Like, I just recently have been getting out, right? Just recently been going to do things. I mean, I have stayed home pretty much for 2 years. I right after you and I talked, I got a job working from home. I have been staying home. I go to the store or whatever, but I rarely have left the house. Right. And finally I started to travel a little bit. I just got back from Colorado.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was great. And I went hiking spent 4 days in the wilderness and got a chance to kind of really unplug and really get some perspective. And that's one thing we have been missing. And that's one thing that was incredibly helpful for me. Like today, I feel more relaxed than I have in so long because I just got back last night, like 2 a.m. And just like, I'm still feeling that, right. that separation from my day to day, that has been missing for so long. Cause the day to day, like, especially working from home, like the day to day it was here, it was contained right here, Right. It's super helpful.
Yeah, no, and that's rare too. I think that people take a trip and come back relaxed because most trips, I think, generally are stressful times. You go to wherever, you got to sightsee, you got to figure out the new public transportation system, and then you come back from your vacation exhausted. But you went and reconnected with the divine, and that then energizes you as opposed to sucks more energy out of you.
Man, that's really that's beautifully said. And there was a lot of stress leading up to the trip too, because my hiking buddy is a big Trump supporter.
Oh,
yeah, and I almost didn't go. Didn't go, because it's like, I love this person, right? And he's my only friend really that is a Trump supporter left, right? Like I've pretty much cut everybody else out except this. I held on this one guy, He's
going down with shit. Yeah.
Hanging on to this one guy. And it's really hard, especially with what, with the court's decisions lately. Right. Everything felt so intense, like I had this like knot in my chest. I'm super glad that we had to reschedule this because that morning that we were supposed to record a couple weeks ago, dude, I was just in tears all morning. It was just like, everything had hit me so hard, and that converged on that day, and I almost didn't go on this trip, but you know what? We got out in the wilderness and we didn't talk about politics at all. We were just surviving, we were just trying to like get through the day. Where are we going to camp? How are we going to, it was raining the whole time. Like, and it really helped me to step back and be like, okay, this is a human, right? This is a person I love. I think it's abhorrent what they support, but this is a person that I love, that I'm in it together in this universe with, right? On this earth with.
Because then you do have things in common, right? I mean, they always say we have more in common than we have in differences, and I think that sounds great. I don't know if that's entirely true, but I mean, I guess it, if you break it down, sure, survival, love, family, all those kinds of things. But you want, I'd be the tempting thing for me, putting myself in your shoes, would be around the campfire to be like, so dude, I got to ask you, that's, it'd just be on the tip of my tongue the entire time. But I'm glad you did.
Well, 2 years ago last year. Yeah. Last year we went to Glacier and same thing, 4 days in the backcountry. And we talked about politics I guess politics. We briefly talked about COVID at the beginning of the trip, and I hit him with facts, and he got angry, and he's like, I don't want to talk about politics, and I said, okay, and then I spent the whole hike stewing. Thinking about politics. And that's why I almost didn't go this year. But this year I was just like, let go, dude. You have to let go. You're here to have fun. You're here to detach.
Yes.
Right. And it worked.
Well, good. I'm so glad to hear. I mean, it's amazing it didn't come up even just like on the trip back to civilization, like,
Well, and it usually does. It usually does on the way back to civilization. But what was interesting about this trip too was that there was a third guy who joined us who's never gone. He's never gone with us. He's never gone on a hike at all. And he is from the same part of the world as my buddy here in Central Florida. And, I'm in Orlando, so I'm in kind of a liberal bubble. And if you get outside of Orlando, then it gets to the Florida man kind of stereotype. And so these guys live in a town kind of like the one I grew up in that is the stereotype that you think of if you're outside of Florida looking in. And so I was kind of worried about this guy because he was a wild card, right? Like I don't know this guy. I don't know this guy. He might be Trumpier than my buddy, right?
Sure.
So I
don't like Trump, but I'm a QAnon. Oh, okay.
Right. Exactly. And so we get to like the fourth day, and I had a little bout of altitude sickness. And this guy that had joined us for the first time was really struggling. Like it was his first hike and it was a pretty strenuous hike. And so we kind of ended up falling behind, the two of us, and started talking and getting to know each other. And he said something that I thought was just so beautiful. He said, he's like, I don't know how politics came up, but it came up in that moment as I'm about to throw up. And so he's like, he goes, I really haven't been into politics until the last 6 years. And I was like, well, that makes sense, of course, right? It's kind of necessary these days. And he said, he goes, what I've learned is if I'm not educated about it, I don't speak on it.
Good man.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And I was like, oh man, there's a lesson there. I feel like I'm pretty educated on most things I speak on, but it just kind of gave me pause to go like, wait a minute.
Right.
Am I spouting off about shit I don't understand? Yeah,
I'm quick to say I don't know a lot about it, and that's a lot of my lead into sentences. Because also it puts people at ease that you're not trying to teach them. Like it's kind of more of a peaceful way to approach a squirrel. Like no drastic movements, no arms flinging, and you're going to scare the people off. So just like I don't know a lot about this, but what my understanding of it is blah blah blah, kind of a way to put people at ease a little bit, before. But I had a piano tuner come out. So I don't know if I talked to you if it was early pandemic. I think it was after that. So I had a couple of just crazy things. And so I got an electric car. So I had to have somebody put the electricity in. So a guy was recommended, comes over. And at some point, I think we had the Google on, and it was a local radio station, and they played a song of mine. And my wife said something, hey, and the guy said, and she said, that's kind of a big deal, or something like just about like that they played this old song. And he said, big deal. And she's like, oh yeah, he was just on the radio or something. And he went, it was a big deal. And she was like, oh, who? And he goes, me. And we're oh. And he said, do you know the movie My Cousin Vinny? And we're like, uh-huh. And he said, I wrote that. And I was like, really? I was like, and I'm pretty sure, just based on looks, that he probably wasn't in the movie business, but it's possible. And then he said, do you know the song Tears in Heaven? I said, Eric Clapton? And he said, yeah. He's like, that was mine. And my wife's going, oh my God, I can't believe it. And I'm just like, we know that's not true. I think it was Waylon Jennings and Eric Clapton or something that wrote it. And then he went into, and he's like, this one will blow your mind. What? He said, Vogue. I said, by Madonna. He said, I wrote that. And my wife's like, oh my God, that's incredible. I was like, don't encourage him. the man is clearly not right. I mean, these are all disprovable things pretty easily. And of course I did, just because, it's a weird world that, of course he had nothing to do with it. So then I have a piano tuner come over just a couple of weeks ago, and she, and I had a feeling about her, again, judging the book by its cover. And then I said, so how have you been? And which was a mistake. And then she said, well, I've lost a couple people and COVID. I'm so sorry to hear that. And then she said, in this country. And I said, oh yeah. And then she, then of course said, Biden with just opened the pipeline. And I was like, yeah, see, well, it's just doesn't really work that way, And so then we go into this thing, and I thought, okay, calm yourself. Just go sit down and you kind of knew this was coming. Just sit down. And I couldn't do it. I sat for 30 seconds and let her riff. And then I was like, at some point I was like, oh, get the fuck out of here. Like, you can't believe that. And then I stood up and then that was it. And so finally I had to leave my own studio just because I felt bad. And I was getting really up, I was so disappointed at myself that I couldn't just try to calmly have a conversation. I just couldn't, because it was just so crazy, and I said, listen, I was in New York all through the 90s, and Trump's been a criminal forever. Like, everybody knew he was a joke, and a crook. And she's like, what about Burisma? And I was like, oh, come on. And I left and I walked out of the studio with her still talking, and that was it. And I went and told my wife, I was like, oh my God, you won't believe what just happened. And then just a few weeks ago at the airport, my bag got flagged because of the harmonicas. They looked like magazine clips. And I said, I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I know, I never heard. She said, well, they look like bullets. I was like, oh my God. So then she's like, you wouldn't believe the things that people try to sneak through there. I can imagine. And then she said, and then I was like, okay, good. And she's like, just, want my country back. And I was like, yes, absolutely. The guns are, and she's like, and the fucking gas prices, Biden. And I was like, oh, geez.
Oh my God.
Just like, I was confused. I was disoriented because, wait a minute. I thought okay, you just pulled a fast one on me. You pulled the rug. And then I was like, oh, come on, man. So anyway, so that was, those were my little, just all in a row. And it's still out there, man. It's still running crazy.
Well, disorienting, I think, is such a great way to describe it. Those moments keep happening. And I think the more I'm out away from my day to day, the more those disorienting moments are happening.
I know, right?
Right. It's like, especially because I get my own worldview reinforced so much by the people that I hang out with, by the media I consume. Every artist I interview for the Marinade agrees with me 99% of the time on things. So I'm constantly in that echo chamber, and it was really interesting to get out. We drove through Lauren Boebert's district when we were out in Colorado.
Yeah. And what was that like?
It was what you'd think it was like, Trump flags everywhere. And I go home a lot. My dad's health is not great at the moment. And so I'm spending a lot of time in my hometown, which is very much that way, and so if it felt like that, when I was out there, it felt like that. And it's so weird being in my bubble, because it's like, where are these fucking people?
Right.
Where are these motherfuckers?
Right.
And, they're out there, and it was interesting being in Colorado. And also, like, the 4th of July was disorienting this year. I think it was for a lot of us.
Yes.
Because like out in Colorado, people were really doing it up, and there's like parades everywhere. Every little town had a parade, and there was so much joy around it. And then like, for me, I was just like, I feel so weird and conflicted about this holiday. It's such an odd thing.
Independence Day? What do you independent? Who's what?
Yeah. Who's independence?
Yeah. Here too, in this town, I think I told you that too. So, we're in Illinois, but I'm in a red town, and it's weird. And it's, it's the thing. The Trump thing, even though I'm sure you read the New York Times thing about his polling and it's all terrible, and DeSantis now they're all kind of thinking maybe he's the next in line. He's got next, but yeah, it's the thing that's disorienting is that it's not even American. They're beholden to a guy. It's not even, if they were really like American patriots, like, I just love America so much it drives me crazy, it would be insane, but it would make more sense to me than the guy. Like, Trump is America. He's just they worship at the altar of a guy, not of even of a fictional land
or an ideal
landmass. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know.
Well, St. Paul's Boulevard is beautiful. Perfect segue. Natural segue.
Yeah.
Yeah, your record, St. Paul's Boulevard, is beautiful, man. There's so much I like about it. So one thing I really like is, dude, you went and put 15 songs on this record.
Yes.
And I just feel like we don't get that a lot. A lot of times it's down to 7 to 10 songs, maybe 12 at the most. But it's 15 songs, not a single miss. Just every single song is a banger. Every single song is dripping with imagery. Every single song is dripping with empathy. And I'm interested in so much about it, but starting off with just the intro. Can you talk about like that first 37-second clip at the beginning?
Yeah, it was kind of an accident. I wanted some Stephen Gillis, who produced the record with me. He kind of wanted just some city noise, because St. Paul's Boulevard is a fictional place. However, in my mind, it's kind of more of a specific area of Chicago. So we wanted just some sounds from it. And so my friend EQ, who was going to see my wife play a gig, and I said, hey dude, during a break, will you go out and just get some, the L Train and da-da-da. And so he was standing there recording the L Train, and this guy comes up to him and just said, hey man, and he just goes into this riff that's on there, and he was recording, and the guy didn't know, and he ended up giving him some money, and it was a longer clip, but we edited it, and it was just, the fact that, whether it was a grift or not, I don't know, probably, how those things go, but because he seemed awfully specific about his plight, and, had his mom's an abusive relationship, and goes into all these things. So it just seemed kind of fitting for a guy downtrodden, and yet he said, tomorrow's a new day, and there's a song New Year's Day on it. It just seemed like this real gift from the universe to be like, that's kind of everything about the record. I thought, let's put it on there. And Anam Cara is a Gaelic word for soul friend, and it was a great book by John O'Donoghue. And so anyway, it was just it was kind of an accident, a beautiful accident. And back to the 15 songs, I was kind of hesitant about that. Steven, my co-producer guy, he was my drummer too, but he said, man, they're all just so good. And I said, yeah, but 15, that's a lot, man, and I think the reason records are shorter now is just because people's attention span, so just, TED Talks are only 17 minutes, because they figured out that's as long as you can get anyone to concentrate. Records should be like 17 minutes then. But 3-song album. But anyway, so that's it. So we just, it's a bad habit of mine to lean into things that I know aren't good for me, and so I'm glad. I'm happy to hear you say that.
Because I think a lot of times when there's a great record, and this is a great record, when there's a great record and it's only 10 songs long, and I understand sometimes there's only 10 songs, or sometimes those 10 songs are what they need for that particular record. But for me, I always want more. I want more from the songwriters that I respect and love, So like, I'm glad that I got more from you. I'm glad I got these 15 songs.
Yeah, it's over an hour too. Yeah, which I was like, oh my God, but whatever. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, long form in general, I know, and you're exactly right with people's attention spans. I get that, but I also think there's a lot of us who, and I'll admit that my own attention span is waning, right? I mean, sure. I'm a victim of technology, just like anybody else in today's world, like anybody else, but I still will sit with the record. I'll still sit, and especially like if I have a physical copy, I'll sit and I'll put it on and I'll listen and I'll just spend time in that record. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of us that feel that way,
Yeah. And mine too. And, I have an 11-year-old, and I call it like the swipe generation, because I see it with, not to sound impossibly old, but, to see my daughter and her friends, everything's very ephemeral and disposable, and friendships and relationships, and the way they turn on people, it's just like next. I mean, everything. Next purchase, the next TV show, next movie, next binge watch, next whatever. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that we could spend a lot of time on that. I work with middle schoolers, and so
Oh,
like
okay.
yeah, so I see that. I see a lot of that, and help trying to navigate that as a teacher, and help kids to both get what they need in terms of not only the knowledge that they need, but also the social skills and the emotional skills that they
Right.
need. In a world where legislatures are attacking that. I mean, in Florida, that they're going after social emotional learning and trying to eliminate it. They are eliminating it from the curriculum and making it
Really?
just straight up illegal. Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, man.
What would that entail? Social and emotional learning. What do you mean when you say that?
Yeah. So in the last, probably I'm just from my own experience speaking here, last probably 10 years, there has been a push toward providing space in class for kids to develop skills where they can to help them deal with their emotions, right? And so that's things like mindfulness. That's things like I incorporate yoga breaks into my class, for example. Yeah. So like you talked about 17 minutes. So let's say I've got a 12-year-old, right? Their attention span's usually about like 13, 14 minutes, right? Okay. So every 12 or 13 minutes, I'm going to stop, give them a chance to take a break. That could just be, we're going to take some deep breaths.
Right.
That could be, we're going to take a very quick yoga break. We're just going to kind of hit dancer real quick. Right.
That's awesome. I love it.
And then back to work,
Right.
And
that's all just on you. That's just your idea, or do other teachers do this? Or
a lot of teachers do it. There's literature out there. There's a book called Teach, Breathe, Learn. I don't think I have my copy here anymore. I think I gave my last copy to somebody, but it's a great book that has transferable skills for parenting, for just for your own life. I mean, just learning how to giving kids those skills to be able to go like, all right, I'm angry right now. Why am I angry? Right. Because so often kids don't know why they're angry. Right. And it's deeper rooted. It's almost always not the thing that's right in front of them. It's something deeper. Yeah. And so there has been kind of this bigger global push in American education to incorporate those skills, because like if a kid doesn't feel safe and controlled, they can't fucking learn. Like if a kid's brains are on fire, I mean, all of our brains are on fire right now. Imagine being 11.
Right. Right.
And so to provide them with those skills, and the culture war argument that Republican legislators are making is the idea that they think that's rooted in some sort of Eastern religion or some shit, right? Which I guess it is, but
So, and that's bad. Why?
Yeah, exactly. But just finding those moments, I mean, not only for kids, but for adults. Like, I mean, how often, thankfully, I have an amazing therapist who reminds me to do that stuff, to bring my awareness back to my breath and to reality test situations. Otherwise, my demons would take over.
Sure. There's a great thing I had heard that's compared like the mentality of Eastern versus Western, is that Western people go, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm not in control. And the Eastern version is, relax, you're not in control. It's the same thing. You're not in control. Both admit that. One freaks out about it. One's calmed by it,
Yeah. Oh man, that is the constant work, right? Like for me, that is the constant work, that idea of control. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I can't remember if we talked about this last time, but speaking of control, how comfortable are you in the process of making a record to cede some control to a producer, or to how comfortable are you with your babies?
Yes, not great at it, but I have that conversation with myself, dude. You don't always have the best ideas, like just and certain things I'll hear for the first time and go, oh yeah, I hate that. And then Heather will be like, what was that? That was so cool. And I'll be like, that, and then he'll listen again, and then it'll be like Steven will have done something with the guitar part, and then she's like, oh, that's so great. And I'm like, is it? I don't even know what's great anymore. So, okay, great. And so that's my ego. You're just putting up a block. So I'll just, so I'm not great at it, because I always think I know best, and I don't. And I know that I don't, However, that's a internal battle that I constantly fight. Yeah.
That's a hard thing too, because what is best? Right.
Yes.
Also,
Right.
that's the other thing. You got to
Right.
trust your intuition to some extent, but also if somebody else's ears are on it, especially somebody who you respect, like
Right.
that's a really tough
It is.
balance.
And it's fun. And now that specific thing I was even telling you about is like one of my favorite parts on the album.
That's
the
great.
Thing I hated it at first.
That's so funny. Can you share what that is?
It's in Marlowe. It's the guitar solo.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. I was just listening to Marlowe earlier.
Weird sounding, and no. That's just, yeah. I mean, it was funny. It was intense, immediate reaction, negative. So, but now I love it. Yeah.
That's funny. That's really, really funny. Yeah, that's a great tune. You haven't shied away from talking about recovery and addiction, both, in your life and in your music. Am I right to say that this record explores some of those themes more than normal?
It does. Well, I think that, yes. And so, yeah, it seems like I'm just clearer about it now, because I think my descent into madness was intentional at first. And then it just got the best of me, and then I couldn't get out. But I went down to the subterranean to seek it, because I lived a very sheltered life and I didn't know the underground at all. And I mean, even Brian Kaufman, like when we first were in LA together, I'd never been to a strip joint. I'd been drunk once in my life. And I said, I want to see the gutter. And he had said, filled with remorse later, he said, I never would have showed it to you had I known you would take it down so far. So I couldn't get out. And it was quite enjoyable for a long time, but now I think I'm able. It's like trying to write about your nose. When I was in it, I thought I was writing about my nose, but I couldn't even see it very well because I was so immersed in it. So now, I'm over there and I'm going, oh, look at all this stuff I didn't really notice. So I think there's just perspective I have on it now, that really I went down there to investigate it and stay down there and thought I was doing my work, but really I was just immersed in this molasses of things. And now I'm just going, oh, I could write about this better from here, from this perch, as opposed to being down there. It was a foolish endeavor, to go think you could write about something by him. I guess you do have to immerse yourself in it in some degree, but now to answer your question, yes. I think a lot of it is, I think maybe even more so and more, it's certainly more clear than the past records, I think, because there's more of a understanding of it, I think.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever, at least on this show, heard somebody describe that they kind of went down there seeking the darkness, rather than, because so often I think with addiction, it's like it kind of sneaks up on you.
Yes.
Right. Whereas,
they say that you're drunk before you drink. So I think it was a perfect storm of sorts. I think maybe that was what was compelling me to immerse myself in that, is because I had all those, all those personality quirks, defects, whatever you want to call it. But so it was a beautiful, once we met, it was on, so I think I was going to get there eventually. I just went down there. I went knocking on the door first,
I wish I could have been a fly on the wall when you and Koppelman were going to a strip club.
Yeah, well, we would do all kinds of things, we would just gag ourselves. Like, we went to this party, I remember, with people that became very famous, and we went, and the plan was that I was going to not speak, and I was going to wear a robe like Vinny the Chin, and I had so I wore a bathrobe. And so we went to this party, and so people would be like, oh, so you're and Brian was known to these people because he was kind of famous in then, even, because he's signed Tracy Chapman and all this stuff. And it was a music industry party. And so people knew who I was because there was this big signing, which was me. And so they would say something to me like, oh, so you're in LA, you're making your first record? And then I'd lean to Brian and I'd whisper in his ear, and then he would say, Michael said, yeah, he's recording out in the, and so he would do this. And it was just this crazy, we would just do all kinds of crazy things. And and he'd say, whether it would, we'd be in a sushi restaurant, write a song, they would be going out and he'd make me go to David Levine's house and you got to go write a song about that waitress. And then they'd go out and I'd be like, oh man, he'd give me these assignments and, I want to go out. Like, nope, write a song first. And then they'd come back a few hours later and I'd have to play him the song. It was funny.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you shared all that. What a fun story.
Yeah. And I didn't even really and then Brian Sintz has said, do you know who this, and he would name me the people that were there. I was like, oh, you're kidding. Because it was just so, it's a weird night, but I can't say who it was, but yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Dude, that is so wild. Are you the assignment like that? Does your writing process work that way? If you're given an assignment?
That was like 21, so it was just all, I was in LA making a record. It was all just mind blowing. So I think we recorded that song for the first record, didn't use it, but yeah, no, it wouldn't work like that at all. I think on What in the World, there was a song called Mother Emanuel that was like a homework assignment where I wanted to write about something that I didn't know anything about, didn't know enough about, that I needed to research, and I didn't know how to research. And then my friend TJ English, who writes these true crime books, or I don't know if that's what you'd call them, but so he's like, well, what you need to do, you need to get in touch with it. Oh, okay. And I reached out to the pastor, and the pastor was very suspicious, and rightfully so, to have some, white kid from Chicago wanting to, he didn't know probably what my angle was, and my intentions, that was something you're going to come down and write some salacious, because originally I thought that would be an album. I thought What in the World would be an album about Mother Emanuel, and each victim would have a song, and I would go deep on each person. And then the last song on the record would be Dylan Roof, and he'd have a song. And I thought that was my concept, which I thought that could have been interesting. It probably would have been a little too much, but anyway, the pastor was not interested in helping me, and I tried a few times, and then I just did any research I could do, and had notebooks on each victim, and I'd had notes on everybody and pictures on the cover, so I could get. Anyway, it didn't work out. It turned out to be a song, but yeah, writing assignments are rough for me. It just yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that seems like a really, excuse me, my body's adjusting to the Florida humidity from after being out west for 10 days.
Right.
That song is a stunning song and a standout on that record, and which is a great record top to bottom. That seems like a really heavy place to be in, though.
Yeah.
To do that research.
Awful. It was awful. It was horrible. And so I was like almost a crazy person. I had notebooks all over the floor, and Heather would come in and be like, oh my God, what is all this? And like pictures of, these, so it was, it was an interesting exercise. Certainly gets you into the head of these people, and, the conversations, and you read these things. And the funny thing about it, the most amazing thing that I don't think I talked about in the song at all was so there's this issue of forgiveness. And at Dylan Roof's hearing, one of the victim's sisters said, I forgive you. And another family victim was outraged. I don't allow you to forgive him. And it gets very tricky terrain there. Because in Judaism, you can only be forgiven by the person you inflict upon. So basically, if you kill somebody, you can never really be forgiven while you're alive, because that person's gone. They have to be the ones to forgive you. So it was a fascinating thing about forgiveness, I thought, how some people can forgive, and how people were angry that the other people forgave them, like almost as if I don't allow you to forgive them. And it was a really great, fascinating thing for me, at least. It was fascinating, and I couldn't write about it. It's too complex, and I don't think I get it really, but it's something I think about from time to time.
Wow. How about in you personally with forgiveness? How good are you at that? How
I'm not good. I was growing up, I was the no sorries kid. So when anybody in the neighborhood would do something to me, and they'd come before I told on them or whatever. And I'd say no sorries, because I was always hanging out with older people, but I was no sorries. That was like my nickname, no sorries, because I was this Irish dog in it with a bone, and resentments and I'm bad with resentments, that steered my life away from me, really. Being angry, being resentful and bitter, those are things that I struggle with to this day. Terrible.
Interesting. You mentioned Judaism and forgiveness. This record, and I said earlier that it seems like there's more discussion of recovery and addiction than some of your past work.
Yeah.
Is there more? Another thing that jumped out to me is sort of spirituality as a thread going through the record.
Yeah, thank you. I think so. I hope so. Because it was just this I don't know why my brain worked like it did. It just, I kept going back to these things and kind of like, oh, Irene's in this one too. And it's just, I kind of felt these characters kind of, making multiple appearances in my head, and in this template of what, Chicago. And then really it was kind of like, what it is for me, at least, it was like Wicker Park in Chicago during the late 90s through the late 2000 up to 2008. And it was like a burgeoning, there was a lot of music, and, the Urge Overkill, the Pumpkins, Liz Phair, and myself, and Material Issue. And there was this community of people and crazy people. And it was like Seattle, it was like Seattle light, it was like the second version of Seattle in the early 90s. And then, but it was just a bunch of people. It was like a real neighborhood. And then there's even neighborhoods within neighborhoods, and whether, everybody had their own bar, and that was their bar. And I love that. And I think it goes, and I just was thinking about it because now, as you said, you've been inside for so long, and me too. I'm a recluse by nature, but I think, we do better with other people, and people that live longer have the best relationships and the best interactive relationships, where we have a lot of interactions online socially, but we have very few connections anymore, at least me. And so it's, I always, it's funny, Larry David said something like, when anybody cancels on me, I want to send them flowers, that's kind of like that, oh, you can't make it, that's fine, man, no worries at all.
Yeah.
And that's bad. And I know the more I go isolate, the worse I get. All of it just starts breeding. It's a breeding ground. It's a bad garden. And but yeah, this record, I found myself going back to a lot of the things I felt really unresolved about, relationships and people, and and it was the beginning of a terrible, a lot of people died, and drugs and all that, and crime and guns, and so yeah, I think that there was a lot I had to go back to, but I think that hopefully that, and I appreciate you saying that there's a lot of forgiveness, and and I'm okay. I'm finally okay through this process of a lot of that time, I think.
Yeah, it feels like there's a hopefulness to it that's rooted in something spiritual.
Yeah,
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, because there is, it's a letting go. Letting go can be a very profoundly spiritual thing, and it's like, again, I'm not in control, and we try to hang on to these things, man, that we want to, it seems like I spend so much time trying to make right for all I've done wrong, and it's an impossible endeavor. And I used to wake up every morning thinking, who do I have to send flowers to, because I was always wreaking such havoc on everyone. And it was just it was a great, if you're prone to shame, that kind of behavior is perfect. It was just, it all fed each other. And so anyway, I was saying goodbye to, I think, a lot of that with this record. Yeah,
man, that's great to hear. Yeah, I'm definitely prone to shame, and thinking about writing, for me, I don't think I've done a whole lot of direct damage to folks in my life, but I think that a lot of the attitudes and beliefs that I grew up with, being raised the way I was in the place that I was, and having to come to terms with how destructive some of those things were, and how much damage those have done to me and to my psyche, and not being overly woe is me about it, right? But also recognizing that like I have a responsibility. I feel a responsibility to do the opposite, and
Yes.
and to
And
to
that's like,
counter
right.
those attitudes.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And that cycle, like it ends with me. It's like I'm not going to perpetuate that on anybody else. And that song going back to the What in the World Die With Me is like, like with my daughter and addiction and all that, like it fucking ends here. Like all that shit, all that baggage. I want to cut the tether, and so it doesn't poison her, like it's important to me to not put my shit on her,
Right. Oh, that's great. It's beautiful. So it sounds like that the St. Paul's Boulevard is inspired by that's kind of that a place and time. Is that accurate to say? And so like, what was that? Because it sounded almost when you were talking about that time in Chicago, it sounded like there was this tension between like all of this beauty, and then there's like some loss and some pain in there.
Yeah.
Like what was it like? Was it like you and Billy Corgan going out and having beers together? Like what was that? What was that scene like?
I think that's why. I think because there was success, then people flooded there. Like, because I was in Seattle, believe it or not, in '92, right after Pearl Jam and Nirvana, and so and that scene was crazy and it was great, and there were so many lunatics, and it was perfect for a 23-year-old, like, oh my God, this is awesome. So then going later to Chicago, I mean, not going there, I lived there. So then going back to Chicago, and then it was kind of a similar thing. It was just like anytime there's any amount of pseudo celebrity and success, that it'll just attract a lot of a feeding frenzy of sorts. And so I met Billy but I didn't, done drugs and all that, not with Billy, but other people I won't mention, but yeah, but everybody had their own thing, and it was all kind of like everybody was trying to big time each other a little bit. We were all cordial, but it was I was more in the, I kind of probably took it in a different direction, because of all I was more attracted to the lunacy of it, and they weren't. We were smarter, So, yeah, but it was an exciting time, and I think that's another thing it made such an imprint, was like everybody was kind of like doing good, and like who was going to outdo and whose record's coming out, and it was a lot of healthy competitiveness. Not that I competed with those guys. What I was doing was very different, but it was, you kind of kept an eye on everybody else. And so that was nice that there was community. I haven't been a part of a community as fucked up as that community was. I haven't even been a part of a community since then, really.
Man, that we keep coming back to that idea of like needing each other and needing connections, but also enjoying your own company, right? Like,
right.
I like my own company.
Me too. Yeah.
But I think, and it is so important though. And it's important to talk about. There was I believe it was Hidden Brain, the podcast Hidden Brain, that talked about how specifically men in America struggle maintaining male friendships as they get older, and that family starts to take precedence. We start to lean, men start to lean on their romantic partners more.
Right.
And that becomes.
Why do they say or
I don't want to butcher the the study, but like it's just the idea that like a lot of times we men are sort of discouraged from reaching out for help, and that like we should be the one that is like, I got my shit together, I'm an adult, I'm a man, or whatever. And the reality is we need the help more, just as much as anybody, right? And like we need to be able to cry with our friends, and we need to be able to call them when shit hits the fan. And that's something I've been trying to consciously work on the last couple of years, is like, if I need my buddies, I'm gonna reach out to my buddies. Good.
And you just went on a trip, and that's awesome. I mean, that's it's good. You'll live longer.
Yeah. No, but it's a commitment, because it's so easy to fall into the routine of like, hey, I'm good. I'm here by myself. I'm making my music, or I'm writing, or I'm doing whatever I'm doing that makes me happy. And I got my partner, and like, I'm good here. I don't need anything else. But the reality is you do need both, right?
do. Yeah. And it's like, and every time I piss and moan about having to go out and do something, or meet somebody, I'm always happy I did. Always. I never go, good, that was a waste of time. I'm always like, just feel like a little brighter, a little lighter, you know.
That's how I feel about going to shows. You know, it's like every time I go see live music, I never leave a show and go, I shouldn't have done that.
What a waste of time. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But so often I'll talk myself out of it. I'll be like, doors are at 8. Like,
I know. And then like, is there general admission? Fuck, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally, man. I hear it. I know all the excuses. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Michael, this has been such a pleasure as always.
Yeah, man. It's like therapy talking to you.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I feel the same way. What we typically end on what you're getting down on. So the art that has you inspired, music or a book you've been reading or a film. Or
okay.
TV.
Geez. Well, I'm reading a great book now, and right when you said that, I'm like, what's his name? It's called because it's on my Kindle. You know, you don't look at, it's not like a book cover sitting out on the couch.
Right.
It's called, oh my God. It's, hold on, can I? Get this.
We can edit.
Patrick Radden Keefe.
Okay.
And the name of the book is Rogues, True Stories of Grifters, Killers, Rebels, and Crooks. It's not artistic, but it's great. It's fascinating. And wait, where'd you go now? I can't see. Oh, there you
Sounds great.
Yeah, it's great. It's and they're like, I think it's just a collection of his New Yorker stories, and it's just about all, you know, very funny stuff. But so yeah, beyond that, I haven't done. I'm getting ready for the final 6 episodes of Better Call Saul. I saw the Stranger Things I did with my daughter, and, but yeah, that not a lot. There's not a lot going on with me.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll have to check out that book. That sounds really
it's a great book. Yeah.
Man, St. Paul's Boulevard, just a gorgeous record, and you knocked it out of the park again. Your music is at once timeless, but also very relevant to the moment. And that has been true throughout your career, and maybe no better example than this particular record.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you so much for everything.
I love your room too. It's been great.
Thank you.
Did we just do it on the phone last time, or did we do it?
We did it on the phone last time.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's great.
I'm so grateful for this. Yeah,
me too, and I appreciate your time, man. And and hopefully I'll get to meet you someday in person.
I would love that. I would love. I've never gotten a chance to see you live, so I'm hoping that one of these days we're in the same town and you're playing music, because I'd love to see that. All right, man.
All right. Best
Have a great rest of your day.
Right,
Thanks. You too.
All
right, bye.
Feels like my future's in the rearview mirror. Man, I'm so out of here. Whoa, I'm so sick of this town. Whoa, I'm so sick of this town. And when I go, I won't turn back around. You see, I'm so sick of this. I'm so sick of this. I'm so sick of this town.
Michael McDermott, y'all. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank all of you for listening. Michael-McDermott.com for all things Michael McDermott. The song you're hearing in this episode is Sick of This Town from his record St. Paul's Boulevard. That song just really landed with me, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy the whole record, which if you haven't listened, I feel confident that you will, and you'll love it. Marinadepodcast.com for all things The Marinade, including written pieces, photography, our online store, and more. Give us a follow on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We've been having so much fun over there. I've been trying to let a little bit more of my personality come out and a little bit more of my day-to-day life come out on social media, and it's been fun. I've been hesitant to do that for so long. And now that I'm doing it, it's been a lot of fun. So join us over there on those channels. Subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. Tell a friend about the show. These are all free ways to support the Marinade. If you really like what we're doing, please consider joining our Patreon community, where for just a few bucks a month, You can gain access to Patreon exclusive content like our show Jason's Journey, where I talk about the moments that shape my creative life and provide a window into the process of making the Marinade. I also post what I'm getting down on. I'm actually about to do one right after this episode. Once I finish editing this episode, I'm going to record a special What I'm Getting Down On, which is an examination of the art that is inspiring me at the moment. I'm going to go through my favorite records of the year, and I actually have physical copies of those records. So I'm going to go through and kind of talk about them and record a video. That's the kind of stuff that we do over on Patreon. We've been known to get together for Patreon happy hours, patreon.com/Marinade podcast if you are interested in diving a little deeper into the show. If you want to support the show financially, but you don't want to commit to a monthly subscription, you can Venmo or PayPal us just at the Marinade. All the money goes right back into the making of the Marinade. Right now, that means saving up to cover some festivals, including the wonderful Americana Fest coming up in September. Check out our new weekly title playlist. It's called Marinade Musings. You can find that on our social media pages and by typing Marinade Musings into the title search. Tidal has a free tier now, so if you were holding back from using it because of the paywall, fret no more. Marinade Musings is a short list of songs that I find interesting. It's stuff that I'm letting marinate at the moment. Y'all, I'm so grateful for these conversations. This Michael McDermott was just wonderful, as he was the last time. I mean, I think back to that first episode I recorded with him, and it's just another one of those, thank you all so much, because without you, this doesn't happen. Right? So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for spreading the word. I appreciate y'all. Until next time, go out and create something. Cheers, y'all.